Hello, everyone. Welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure: all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure: trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. You can get in touch with me through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And we'll see plenty of examples of that today. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding expected trading range and volatility for the day, as well as a directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis, and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. Glad you're here. So here's my agenda for today. That's Wednesday, June 18th. Didn't quite get finished editing that slide. So Wednesday, June 18th. First of all, we'll go over news items, economic data, and events for today as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today to see how traders have been trading, how they're positioned going into the FOMC announcement at 2 p.m. and the press conference at 2:30. Then I'll, of course, at 2 p.m., I'll go over to the live market and we'll watch primarily the S&P 500, take a look at the NASDAQ too, as the FOMC announcement comes out. All right, let's get started. Started with news items again. Again, FOMC announcement, 2 p.m. And this is the CME Fed Watch tool. Current Fed funds rate, target rate, 425 to 450 basis points. And the market is almost universally expecting no change, 99.9% chance of no change. So there won't be any surprises to the rate announcement. So then the algos will parse the statement for any differences. And of course, the big move most likely will happen when Jerome Powell begins the press conference at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, so that is the FOMC announcement this week. Note this morning was VIX expiration. We'll take a look at that in just a minute at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. There's often a little bit of volatility right at the open, the cash open with the FOMC announcement. And then tomorrow, of course, is a holiday. Futures markets will be open until, I believe, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So futures market closed at the normal time today, 5 p.m. Eastern, open again at 6 p.m., and then we'll close tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and then reopen tomorrow afternoon at 6 p.m. again. So that's just futures markets. The equity exchanges will be closed tomorrow. All right, let's take a look. And then Friday is the big monthly options expiration. It happens to be at the end of the second quarter, and that is typically a very large expiration. So what this chart is showing, this is from the Spotgamma dashboard home screen, and what this chart is showing is delta notional, market makers delta notional on the vertical axis by expiration on the horizontal axis, and then this is the expiration on Friday. And this is call bars showing positive delta notional, and then the blue bars negative delta notional, put delta notional. And you can see this is a heavily call dominated options expiration. Typically in a call dominated expiration, some of those calls, positive gamma that has been supporting the market, keeping the market volatility in check, those will expire. And the expectation is for more volatility, a little bit of consolidation next week after expiration. And that's just the typical behavior of in a call-dominated options expiration. All right, so that is the news items. Let's move on to positional analysis now. This is the S&P 500, ES Futures and Bookmap. And before I take a closer look at this chart, there are a couple of key levels that have been in play for today. I'm going to take a look at a higher time frame. I'm going to go to the underlying index, SPX. This is a one-day, one-year chart and Thinkorswim of SPX. Key point here is the recent resistance right around 60.50. There's the May 12th gap up, pull back, May 23rd, rally, then resistance 60.50. All right, let's take a look at a 30-day 1-hour chart now. So there's that May 12th gap, China tariff news. And then resistance actually right around 60.60, but generally 60.50 has been resistance. And most recently, SPX is trading in a consolidation range between about 59.60 and 60.60. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. I'm going to start with the expected moves. So the dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market. Based on the closing price for SPX from Friday, those levels remain in place for the entire week. Dashed blue lines showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. I do post those levels in Discord every day, the evening before. And note the expected move for today for SPX was right around 62.5 points, 62.59 points, plus or minus. And that is due, of course, to the FOMC. And so far, SPX trading right in the middle of both of those ranges. All right, let's take a look now at the spot gamma levels. And these are based on gamma weighted open interest, the dark red lines. They're available to Spotgamma subscribers. They're shown on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 59.15. That's a strike with large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. Note that level did change from yesterday. It dropped down, and we'll see why it is at 59.15 in just a couple minutes. That is the short put strike of the Captain Condor, Iron Condor. So more about that in just a couple minutes. All right, next level up is the volatility trigger. That's at 59.95. That level has been in play for today. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. And above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And though that is based on Spotgamma's older model, what they call the naive model. And we'll take a closer look at gamma in just a couple of minutes. Next level up, just above that, is the absolute gamma strike. That's at 6,000. That's a strike with large absolute positive and negative gamma. That's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. And then finally, the call wall is at 60.35. And note that level also moved lower from yesterday, and that is the short call strike of the Captain Condor, Iron Condor. More about that again in just a couple of minutes. All right, so those are the spot gamma levels. Again, the put wall and the call wall both shifted lower. That is due to the Captain Condor, Iron Condor. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX. With a 1-minute chart. Dark shaded portions are showing the regular trading hours. So today there was, looks like a pretty flat open. Sharp rally up. Resistance at the 6,000 absolute gamma strike. Pull back to the 59.95 volatility trigger. A move up. We'll see what was going on up here. Then a pull back to 6,000. Support at that level. And then most recently, SPX broke down below that level, now moving back up. All right, so that's SPX. Again, the 59.95 volatility trigger and the 6,000 absolute gamma strike definitely in play for today. Let's take a quick look at SPY, the other underlying index components. And the only spot gamma level in play for today is the 600 call wall. And note that was resistance earlier today. And we can see that on the ES chart as well. So that is the SPY spot gamma level in play for today. Let's zoom out. So you can see that was resistance earlier today, right around 5 a.m. before the cash open. All right, let's zoom in now. All right, so I do have SPX and SPY levels on this chart. And that's because I think ES reacts at the underlying index levels. And I note there is a difference in price between ES and SPX. Today, it's right around 55 points. So again, I am using the September contract, the U contract. All right, so we've already seen the 600, SPY 600 absolute gamma strike call wall acting as resistance. right around 5 a.m. Then here's the SPX 6,000 level, and then the 59.95 volatility trigger. So the 6,000 level is at ES 60.55, and that level acted as resistance, support. Now, ES is trading right back up to that level. We'll see what happens. See if it acts as resistance again or if price breaks above that level. I also have SPY round number levels on this chart. And here's the resistance heat map above. And those are limit sell orders. That's the heat map showing a history of the limit orders in the order book. Those are limit sell orders at 60.75. All right, those are the levels in play for today so far. ES right back up against the 6,000 absolute gamma strike. I talked about shifts in levels. Put wall, call wall shifted lower due to the Captain Condor, Iron Condor. And then the SPY volatility trigger also shifted lower, and the SPY call wall also shifted lower. All right, that is the S&P 500. We'll get right back to it and see what happens at the 6,000 level. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ, similar chart. And today the QQQ 532 volatility trigger in play, as well as the 530 absolute gamma strike. Let's take a quick look at the underlying index charts for NASDAQ. Start with QQQ. There's the volatility trigger and the 530 absolute gamma strike. Not really clean support and resistance, but they are in play for today. Yesterday was just beautiful on NASDAQ. NASDAQ spent the morning pinging between the 532 volatility trigger and the NDX 21,900 large gamma 4 level up above, then broke down. Beautiful setup, short setup in NASDAQ yesterday. I did post that in Discord and in X. All right, back to NASDAQ. Not sure what was going on here, but a very sharp rebound. NASDAQ didn't quite touch the lows of the day. And let's take a we didn't look at NDX. Actually, there were no. We'll take a look at NDX. No, just to confirm, no Spotgamma levels in play for today. Whoops. All right, there's NDX. No Spotgamma levels in play for today. All right, back to NQ futures. Again, I'm showing NDX and QQQ levels on this chart, as well as key NQ levels. Looks like I need to add more levels above 22,000. All right, that is NASDAQ, shifts in levels. For NDX, the volatility trigger and put wall shifted higher. Absolute gamma strike shifted lower. And for QQQ, the call wall shifted higher. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at gamma. And I'm going to go to the trace tool. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. And again, remember I mentioned the Captain Condor, Iron Condor. And there is the short call spread. And that is at 60.35, 60.40. So Captain Condor is short the 6.35 call, long the 6.40 call. And market makers, again, have the opposite side of those trades. And so they're hedging their delta exposure by taking the opposite side. So they're long the 60-35 call, short the 60-40 call, so you can see the gamma position there. And the same for the put strike down here at 59.10, 59.15. And SPX will typically tag one of those. I'm surprised that anyone would put on a short-term iron condor right in front of the FOMC. But they did. Captain Condor came in yesterday, put an iron condor on, and lost. So typically they will double down the next day. So that appears to be what's happening now. And just beside that, let's take a look at gamma. So the red shading is showing negative gamma, blue shading positive gamma. And positive gamma, again, remember, market makers are trading against price. Their delta exposure. They're buying weakness and selling strength. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. So it looks like right now SPX is in a pocket of slightly positive gamma. And stability index right now is showing at 42%, which is pretty high compared to recent numbers. Excuse me. All right, let's take a quick look and see what options traders have been doing today. So there was a very strong bullish opening drive. So what I'm looking at now is the hero signal. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. Hero stands for Hedging Impact Real-Time Options. And this chart is showing the hero signal for the S&P 500 index components. SPX, SPY, ES Futures, and XSP. So you can see in the morning traders were taking positive delta options positions. That's shown by the rising purple line. White line is price for SPX. So when traders take positive delta options positions, buying calls, selling puts, market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to buy ES Futures to hedge their delta exposure. All right, let's shift to puts and calls. Orange line shows calls, blue line showing puts. So you can see in this morning, traders are buying calls. Sorry about that. I'm going to zoom on. I'm going to go on to the S&P 500 equity signal. So this is the other hero signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500. So this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. And then this signal is showing that traders are buying calls, shown by the rising orange line, also selling puts. And as that activity slowed down right around 10:40, so they stopped or slowed down buying calls, stopped selling puts, and then the S&P 500 started to move lower, reverse lower, as that fuel that had been driving the price higher was gone. All right, now I'm going to shift back to total. Let's go back to the total signal here. Same thing in the S&P 500 index component right here. That was mostly call buying. And I'm just going to leave it on the total signal here. I'm also going to open another window here so we can get ready for the FOMC at 2 p.m. So I'm going to leave this on the index signal. And then I'll shift over to the equity signal in just a moment. Let's take a quick look at NASDAQ. So NASDAQ, also bullish opening drive. And this, they all began right around 9:35. After that little bit of volatility weakness at the open, most likely due to the VIX expiration. All right, so there's the NASDAQ index signal, and that is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NASDAQ underlying index components, NDX and QQQ. Let's take a look at MAG 7. This is the other signal we can take a look at for NASDAQ. And this is showing options trades and market makers hedging activity for the MAG 7 stocks. So all bullish in the morning, very, again, bullish opening drive. and they started to take the foot off the gas about 10:40, and that's when price began to consolidate. All right, let's take a look at the Bookmap charts. I've got about 5 minutes left, so let's go to the S&P 500. So again, there's that little bit of weakness volatility just after the cash open. Magenta dots showing aggressive sellers. Green volume dots show aggressive buyers. So the aggressive buyers really started to come in just a few minutes later as ES moved up above VWAP. Nice pullback, long entry. Again, remember I mentioned 6,000 resistance, 59.95 support. Nice pullback for a long entry up to SPY 601, and then the liquidity absorption at that level at 60.75. All right, that is ES. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. Similar sharp move higher. Aggressive buyers come in. Sellers are exhausted. Pull back right around 10 a.m. down to the 5:30 absolute gamma strike. Also VWAP. And a move up again to above the 532 volatility trigger and liquidity at the 22,100 level. Pull back. Resistance at 532. And note of the morning, rising cumulative volume delta that's shown by the magenta to dark blue line, as well as buy stop orders fueling that move higher. All right, so that's NASDAQ. Let's go back to ES. And note there were some nice moves in stocks this morning as well. Let's take a look at one, Reddit. This was at the top of my watch list for early morning gainers. Very bullish opening drive. And it looks like options traders took the foot off the gas, and now it's consolidating right around VWAP. All right, back to ES. All right, I'm going to zoom in a bit so we can get a closer look at the price action after the announcement. I'm going to open up a small YouTube window on my other screen so I can watch CNBC. That'll be delayed a little bit, but I can I'll be able to see a little bit of information about the announcement and the statement. All right, back to Hero now. Let's zoom in. All right, actually, I want to go back to the equity. So we'll focus on the S&P 500 first. So I'm going to zoom in. Keep the total signal here, puts and calls. Go back to the index signal. All right, so now it looks like the options traders are on hold now. They've taken the foot off the gas. And of course, SPX did break above the 6,000 level. Let's go back to Bookmap. Remember when I started, we were looking at the 6,000 level. Price broke above that, found support there, then resistance at the SPY 600 level. All right, I've got about 20 seconds. All right, 2 p.m. Initial reaction bullish. All right, waiting on the information on CNBC. Again, it is delayed. Of course, Fed's fund rate unchanged, as expected. Now the algos are parsing the statement. Looks like resistance at the SPY 601 level. We'll take a look and see what options traders are doing in just a minute. All right. Yes, heading back down to the SPY 600 absolute gamma strike, call wall. We'll see if it finds support at that level. Fed economic activity continues at solid pace. Note this meeting is the dot plot also comes out. I'm not sure when that will be. Of course, again, Fed funds rate unchanged. Let's see what options traders are doing. So initial reaction bullish. Now ES moving lower down to point of control, that purple line. Let's check and see what options traders are doing. Go back to Hero. On the index signal. So it looks like options traders are actually following price. So price, unemployment remains low, inflation remains somewhat elevated. All right, so the Hero signal now a few seconds behind the move in price. Swings in net exports have affected data. Forecast increased inflation, reduced growth in 2025. Sounds like stagflation. All right, so that is the index signal. Let's check the Hero equity signal. Initial move higher, then lower. Now maybe turning up again. All right, back to Bookmap. All right, so ES back down to the 6,000 absolute gamma strike. Let's see what happens at that level. Also VWAP, the light blue line. All right, so right now the 6,000 level, around that level, may be acting as support. At least some consolidation at that level. Back to Hero. All right, so the equity signal, Hero signal starting to turn up a little bit. Same for the index signal. Consolidation around 6,000, SPX 6,000. All right, any questions, comments? All right, now the Hero signal turning lower. So now it looks like the 6,000 level acting as resistance. All right, so resistance at SPY 601, consolidation around the 6,000 level, then a breakdown below. Now remember, this is ES 6050, which is equivalent to the volatility trigger, SPX 5995 volatility trigger. So it looks like maybe more consolidation around that level now. Let's check back, see what options traders are doing. That's the equity signal. Let's go to the index signal. Still making lower highs. So we know so far after the announcement, price broke below 6,000, found resistance at that level. Now it's broken down below 59.95. Looks like maybe ticking up now. So consolidation at that level. Let's see what happens. Back to Bookmap. All right, so at this point, the algos have completed their scan of the statement a while ago. So now looking for the biggest reaction at 2:30 at the press conference. And ES trading in between the zone between the 59.95 volatility trigger and the 6,000 absolute gamma strike. Let's check Hero again. That is the index signal now turning a little bit higher. Check the equity signal. Maybe turning a little bit lower. Let's open up one more tab for Hero here so we can take a look at NASDAQ. Go to full screen, take a look at the NASDAQ index component. Zoom in. All right, so that's moving lower. Let's go Bookmap, check NASDAQ. Zoom in. Oops. Sorry about that. Sorry about all the zooming. All right, so NASDAQ found resistance at the QQQ 530 volatility trigger just after the announcement. Move down below the 530 absolute gamma strike. Let me darken up the heat map. So you can see the buyers, the passive orders, came in as NQ was moving higher. Now NQ moving back down, testing the 530 level again. And after the move down, VWAP, light blue line, acting as resistance. All right, that's NASDAQ. David, welcome. Glad you're here. David says, please describe Hero. Hero is a tool available to Spotgamma subscribers. And what it is showing is options trades and market maker hedging activity in real time. So just as a simple example, when traders buy calls in a stock, market makers sell the calls, options market makers, and they have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. And that can be one of the drivers of price moving higher. In fact, like I said in my introduction, large cap tech stocks, as well as equity index futures, it is a very large driver of price. And you can go to the spotgamma.com website and get a lot more information about Hero. The support center, I believe, is free to everyone. So you can read more about Hero there, but I use it daily. I would not, I don't like to trade without it. Now, it's not available for all stocks, not all index components. But I think there is an advantage of trading using Hero. Noel, welcome. Glad you're here. Kind of a muted reaction so far. Yeah, that was to be expected. Of course, 99.9% chance of the Fed leaving the rate unchanged. So that was expected, and of course that's what happened. And then the algos have already parsed the statement. They probably did that in the first few seconds. And then this is now traders are waiting on the press conference that begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And Renewed, welcome, glad you're here, says these bulls are insufferable. Yeah, this is a bull market. All right, so NASDAQ support at the 530 absolute gamma strike. Let's check. Yes. Support at the 59.95 volatility trigger. Now back at the 6,000 absolute gamma strike. And VWAP just slightly below that. Let's go back and check Hero. So David, was that clear about Hero? All right, so we're on the NASDAQ signal now. It looks like traders are continue to take negative delta options positions in the NASDAQ components. Let's check S&P equities. Zoom out just a little bit. Not as steep a decline. S&P 500 index component, also not as steep a decline. Pretty flat. So again, S&P 500 pinging between the 595 hedge wall and the 6,000 key gamma strike, absolute gamma strike. Back to Bookmap. Yes, trading at a very narrow range. Let's check NASDAQ, see if it's responding to the negative delta notional with the index signal. And not so far, just like ES trading at a pretty narrow range. Now trying to move higher. Let's see if it can make it above VWAP this time. That's that light blue line. And Noah says Spotgamma YouTube page had a ton of educational material on the Hero. Very powerful tool. Thanks Thanks, Noah. Yeah, that's right. Check out the Spotgamma YouTube channel for more information on Hero, and you can also watch my videos on Bookmap YouTube. I talk about Hero in every one of my webinars. I use it daily. So if you want to see examples of Hero in use for futures as well as stocks, take a look at the Bookmap YouTube channel, the archives of my recordings. And you're welcome, David. All right, there's NASDAQ, not a whole lot of movement, stuck in this narrow range, trying to break above VWAP. Let's check Hero again. All right, that is for the S&P 500 NASDAQ index signal. Let's open up one more tab here so we can take a look at Mag 7, which also has a strong influence on the S&P 500. It looks like that is pretty much flat. Yeah. So that is looks like right now having a stronger influence on NQ. Traders taking positive delta options positions right up into the 2 p.m. announcement, and then definitely foot off the gas. So that's Mag 7. Index signal continues to move lower. Let's check and see. All right, so this is longer term positions, or at least longer than today. So the teal line is showing options that expire today. And note that is bullish. 375 million delta, positive delta notional. And then the longer term trades departed from the 0 DTE right after 2 p.m. So in longer term, that could be expirations, anything from Friday or longer term, taking negative delta options positions, buying puts and or selling calls. But the 0 DTE remains positive delta. Let's check the S&P 500. We'll check. All right, so just like the NASDAQ index signal, 0 DTE delta notional is positive, and the longer term, the purple line, is negative delta notional. So let's turn that off. Wayne says, thanks. I always appreciate your insights. Wayne, you're very welcome, and thank you for your kind comment, kind words there. All right, let's go back to Bookmap. NQ making a series of higher lows. Looks like it did briefly succeed in breaking above VWAP. Now back down below. Let's check S&P 500, see if it's still stuck in that range between. Oh, it looks like it did also break out above So it did break out above the 600 absolute gamma strike at VWAP just below that. Now back down below. Back in that 59.95 to 6,000 zone. Let's check trace. Now trace showing I guess, really kind of light red shading, slightly negative gamma. It's hard to tell from the shading. And so far, Captain Condor is safe. And for those of you who may not know what an iron condor looks like, let's take a look at that. So here I have just modeled one in Thinkorswim. Let's go to the Analyze tab. And again, for those of you who may not know what an iron condor is, it is a short put spread, which is bullish, on the downside, and a short call spread on the upside. Now, this was placed yesterday. I have no idea what kind of credit Captain Condor was able to receive. I'm guessing it was pretty close to $1.50 credit. So per condor, per contract, and this each iron condor involves 4 contracts or four strikes, so 4 options contracts. As long as price remains between the short strikes, again, that is 60.35 on the upside, 59.15 on the downside. The idea is to collect the premium, and that's how this profits. And again, this was placed yesterday as a 1 DTE options. And it showed up this morning in Trace. And so far, it's a profitable trade. And it looks like the gamma notional here has been reduced somewhat. Let's hover over this. All right, so 60 minutes ago, 134 million. 30 minutes, 109 million. 10 minutes ago, 124 million. So the gamma is reducing a little bit, and the Captain Condor could be taking some of this off, or as time passes, that these options will continue to lose value. So they'll lose value due to charm. So if price stays where it is, Captain Condor will make the full $150 credit. And in my opinion, taking a lot of risk with the upcoming press conference. All right, back to Hero. Index signal for S&P 500 flat. And again, price stuck in this zone between 59.95 and 6,000. And let's check the equity signal. And moving slightly lower now. Looks like SPX down, testing the 59.95 volatility trigger again. Let's check NASDAQ. NASDAQ index signal continues to move lower. Mag 7 signal also starting to turn lower now. All right, let's go back to Bookmap. All right, so ES. Popped up above 6,000. Then broke down to below. Trend break. Nice short setup at the trend break there. Aggressive sellers start to come in, shown by the magenta volume dots. And then price could not make it back up above that 6,000 level. Rolled over, now breaking down below the 59.95 volatility trigger. And looking in the subchart here, you can see cumulative volume delta starts to roll over, and the yellow line showing stop orders gradually moving lower. And then also the light blue line showing icebergs also moving lower. Let's take a look at one other signal. I'm going to turn on the market pulse price change. And this is more of an oscillator. It'll take just a moment for this to load. See if that gives us any additional insight. All right, quick move back up to 6,000. So ES did find support right around 59.95. Let's check Hero. Get that out of the way. All right, that's Mag 7. Let's go to the SP index signal. Let me move that to another screen. SP equities. So just looks like maybe just a quick ping between 59.95 and 6,000. Check NASDAQ. All right, back up to point of control now. That's that dark purple line. Let's check NASDAQ. All right, back up to VWAP. That's that light blue line. Let's see if it continues to act as resistance. And so far, continuing to act as resistance. All right, just to summarize, we'll start with NASDAQ. Initial reaction bullish. Resistance at the QQQ 530 volatility trigger. A move down below the 530 absolute gamma strike. Uptrend, and then resistance at VWAP. Test of the recent lows again. Now back up to VWAP. And in the case of NASDAQ, subchart lines are all increasing. Large traders buying with iceberg orders, buy stop orders, and cumulative volume delta all rising. Back to ES. I'm going to turn off the market pulse price change. Subchart looking a little bit different. Stops, icebergs falling. Cumulative volume delta somewhat flat. All right, let's check levels that were in play. SPY 601 resistance on the upside. Break down below the 59.95 volatility trigger. Looks like there was some. Let me turn up the heat map. Oops. Some buyers down at 60.45. Price didn't quite make it down there. Moved back up to the 6,000 level. So then after the initial move up and down, price has been pinging between the 59.95 volatility trigger and the 6,000 absolute gamma strike, and looks like trying to move higher, but finding some resistance at point of control that's at 60.57. All right, last call for questions, comments. Press conference is beginning. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. And good luck with trading this afternoon. Remember, tomorrow's a holiday. Friday, options expiration. And I will see you on Monday. All right, thanks for watching. Again, see you on Monday. Bye.